So, have you thought about becoming a UFO hunter perhaps? In this video we are going to take a look at factors which may or may not increase the chances of spotting an unidentified flying object or a UAP in the skies. We are going to take a look at the more physical factors influencing the probability of a sighting, as well as the ones which are less tangible and even less understood and more oriented towards oddity, yet claimed by some people to work perfectly fine when it comes to attracting the attention of the phenomenon. But first, if you like the content, please feel free to subscribe, like and comment on the video. First and foremost, we are going to start with the locations where the sightings take place. At first glance, it would seem that while the phenomenon itself is not fully and completely inclined to conceal its presence, otherwise there would have been no sightings at all, it nonetheless prefers at least somewhat remote locations. Many of the sightings of either strange lights or strange objects in the skies come from rural and suburban areas. There are also numerous sightings involving travelers en route to their target destinations. See the video dedicated to the alleged abduction of Betty and Barney Hill available in this channel, for example. On the other hand, we also have cases of mass sightings and reports which are made by many witnesses. Some of the most and best known cases, especially those in recent memory, include the famous Phoenix Lights, a series of sightings observed over the city of Phoenix in Arizona in 1997. Another case widely reported by numerous people, this time over and across an entire country, would be the Belgian UFO wave sightings reported in 1989 and 1990. Then again, we also have cases of mass sightings reported much earlier than that. One of those is the famous case of an alleged battle between UAP objects observed over the German city of Nuremberg in 1561, which made the headlines of the back then newspapers or magazines, whatever we wish to call them. We can also find fairly numerous examples of other sightings and recordings over cities made in the modern age. Many of them are probably either fake or made using CGI tricks, but then again there may be some which are authentic as well. Staying still in the topic of geographic locations, there is a theory which claims that many of the UFO or UAP sightings reported these days seem to happen close to the coastlines. This is a fairly universal observation actually. Some of the collated and prepared maps of UAP sightings clearly indicate areas like Japan, which has long coastal areas along its islands, both coasts of the United States of America and other places like Puerto Rico. Some of the wilder claims seem to indicate this is caused by the presence of an alleged UFO base located under the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. And we still need a reasonable evidence of that claim to resurface, but nonetheless it certainly does sound convincing given the collection of observations made in the areas we have just mentioned. Turning now to a different kind of observations, still dependent on the geography, one of the alleged and claimed theories regarding the phenomenon claims that the UFOs or UAPs are strongly interested in all kinds of nuclear facilities the humankind possesses and uses. From reports of strange observations at the sites of nuclear disasters such as Fukushima in Japan or Chernobyl in modern-day Ukraine, through nuclear ICBM missile silos located both in the USA and in the former Soviet Union, nuclear power seems to attract the strange objects like flame or light attracts moths. Quite a lot of people claim that nuclear detonations cause either some strange effects on the space-time continuum which we do not yet understand and which result in the objects appearing and observing the sites, and some go even further, claiming that nuclear power is capable of knocking UFOs out of the skies, further drawing attentions to the humanity's doings at large. Related to that are the stories from the Cold War era, which I may cover in one of the future videos. Stories which claim that UFOs are able to both switch off and render our nuclear weapons completely unusable, as well as able to trigger the nuclear launch sequences of intercontinental ballistic missiles. The first option is perhaps reassuring, but the other one is equally terrifying. And now turning to the last aspect related to geography, there seems to be no clear favoritism of the side of the UFOs as far as continents go. The sightings have been reported all over the world. And while there are many people who claim that the sightings are mostly confined to the USA, this is far from the truth, at least kind of. While the American people are certainly one of the best equipped with recording equipment and many are actively interested in the phenomenon as well, sightings have been reported all over the globe. No continent is a blank space on that canvas. Now let us consider the demographics. Is there any rule which would contradict the most obvious thought of random distribution of sightings? The answer is both yes and no. Some people claim that the sightings, especially the abduction reports, are more frequent in the part of population who are more religious or spiritually oriented. But there are also people who never considered the phenomenon being even remotely real and yet eventually get to see an unknown craft, often up close. We have complete skeptics and non-religious people who have their own experiences under their proverbial belts. On the far fringe end of the phenomenon, there are people claiming that low IQ is a prerequisite for sightings and abductions. Then again, there are people who include even Nobel Prize candidates and serious scientists, the likes of Professor Gary Nolan and Dr. Jacques Vallée, who are first-hand experiences and witnesses, so this theory is done for at the get-go. What seems to be possibly the case, though, is that UAP sightings go down lineages or families. If one pays enough attention, there seem to be families or bloodlines with vivid interest in or recollection of UFO-related events as things stand. Whether there are indeed people more susceptible to the phenomenon as it is or not, and especially what could be the mechanical side of the relationships, is a subject of debate. There is one aspect or a tech factor which is mentioned very often across the available online media. This is the night vision, or in other words, various kinds and ranges of IR vision translated into the human visual range. From people using cheap IR monoculars or binoculars to people investing thousands of dollars or their equivalent in their local currency, IR technology seems to vastly increase the number of sightings of strange objects and also enhances the view of many other objects in and across the sky, from bird flocks through the International Space Station down to Starlink satellites and other objects. Night vision opens a completely new dimension of observations. People have reported various degrees of success, from the cheapest pieces of tech worth just a handful of local currencies up to the top end of the available tech worth thousands of dollars. This is also linked to some recent claims put forth by actual scientists operating in the field of astronomy, like Dr. Beatriz Villarroel, that the UAPs can be observed in past recordings, like photographic plates recorded in the 1950s and including the now famous Washington DC sightings from 1952. There are strange objects observed in the photographic plates dating back to that period of time which cannot be explained in any simple or obvious manner. Objects which have been recorded across the sky and were definitely not stars or other regular celestial phenomena. Then again, we also have people who have access to a much more powerful technology, and one which is not necessarily easily available to average people. We are talking and thinking about powerful military equipment like FLIR systems monitoring the air in the infrared band and radars. The radar technology has spotted UAP both in military and in the civilian hands. There are numerous known examples of sightings recorded by pilots, Navy and ground forces, with the most famous being the cases presented in New York Times in 2017. With the famous Nimitz encounter presented in detail by Commander David Fravor during the 2023 UAP hearings before the US Congress. Speaking of the military, soldiers acting in various capacities are often considered some of the most credible witnesses. Some of the sightings reported by them are also among the most astounding ones, just to name an object the size of a football field mentioned by Lieutenant Ryan Graves during the same UAP hearing, or other objects resembling a cube inside a sphere. Some soldiers are also claimed to have been injured by this exotic technology upon a closer contact with the alleged craft. One topic worth mentioning and often considered in terms of UFO observations can be boiled down to a simple question. If there are indeed so many sightings reported across the globe, how come there are so few high-quality photos and video recordings available, especially given that we are in the possession of fairly powerful technology in our pockets in the form of modern smartphones? Many of the people who have first-hand witnessed the UAP simply say that the encounter and the observation is just too shocking and too out of the ordinary for them to even consider taking a photo or making a recording. Another important thing that should be mentioned here is that, especially in the proximity of those strange craft, people report the general impact of what seems to be electromagnetic field causing most of electronic devices, if not all of them, to fail, and this includes phones and digital cameras. Related to this is a conclusion drawn by the UFO community, one stating that many of the photos of the alleged alien craft taken, let's say, in 1960s and 1970s using analog cameras actually yield much better quality pictures than modern equipment. Last but not least, there is the alleged ability of the exotic craft to shut down the equipment present nearby at will, thus preventing any solid attempts at filming it. Now, with all the above said and mentioned, we should also take a look at whether it is easier to observe the strange objects at night or during the day. The answer is not the clear one in this case. There are many observations and whatever records people managed to take which took place during the day, just to mention the famous Kenneth Arnold sighting which started the UFO craze in 1947. But then again, at night it is often much easier to spot a shining, fast-moving object in the sky, as they are easier to distinguish from the fairly static celestial bodies like stars and planets. During the day, most people are also simply busy with their day-to-day activity, while at night more people tend to look to the sky, even for the simple purpose of enjoying the view. Some mass sightings, most notably the Phoenix lights of 1997 and the Belgian wave of 1989 and 1990, involved mostly night sightings. Therefore, there is no clear answer as to when to look out for UFOs. An interesting tidbit sometimes pointed out by the experiences is that owls are often spotted at locations where nightly UFO activity has been observed. Whether this is just an accident or are owls somehow able to detect whatever it is that the strange encounters involve remains a subject of debate. And last but not least, there is the very speculative and controversial subject of C5. This acronym stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, namely close encounters with UFOs initiated by human beings. The theory that we are capable of contacting, if not summoning UFOs in some capacity, is promoted by Dr. Stephen Greer, one of the figures involved with the community and observations of potential extraterrestrial activity. According to Dr. Greer's claims, it is possible to enter a deep meditative trance-like state and send the wish to see a craft into the sky, with the otherworldly beings responding to the request through consciousness links. Skeptics point out that the UFO retreats organized by Dr. Greer have involved a hoaxed UFOs seemingly appearing in the sky after a group C5 meditation involving the retreat participants. On the other hand, we also have people who have practiced the C5 protocol themselves and claim to have observed strange lights and craft in the sky. So far, though, the practice remains speculative and very highly subjective. Since meditation is a positive practice for the body and mind in general, there is nothing inherently wrong with trying out the C5 method and see where it leads. In the worst case scenario, nothing will happen. As a curiosity, I wanted to mention a man who dubbed himself Prophet Yahweh and even appeared on the TV in early 2000s. He claimed to be able to summon UFOs, which replied to his calls and appeared in the sky. There is at least one video in which Yahweh met the TV crew and the skeptical reporter asked him to summon a UFO. What happened was indeed a strange object recorded on video by the camera crew. Whether this was an elaborate hoax or a genuine manifestation of some latent abilities we all have remains as speculative as the mentioned C5 method. I hope I managed to at least generally and briefly outline the subject of UFO hunting. Whether and which one of the methods you want and will use, I will leave to you, dear viewer. If you happen to have a sighting and wish to share it, I would be more than obliged to dedicate a video to it. When I myself tried the C5 meditation, I have not observed anything in the skies, but I did have two very vivid dreams involving a parade of strange disc or saucer-shaped craft in the skies in one, while the other had a swarm of tiny disc objects buzzing and moving quickly around me as if performing some kind of a scanning activity. I simply assumed that this was just a dream generated by the brain using the read accounts of various UFO sightings. In the next video, we will return to a case presentation of an alleged crash of an unidentified flying object. Until then, stay tuned, like and subscribe if you wish, and see you in the next one.